Can you hear me? Oh, can you hear me now? Yeah, you can. Okay. All right, let's do that then. So last week we left off with Abraham and Lot, his nephew, coming back from Egypt and bringing all their stuff with them, and then figuring out that they can't fit together with all the livestock and all that stuff. And as you recall, Lot Abram lets Lot decide what land, which way to go, and Lot picks what appears to be a better choice because the land looks just wonderful. And so we talked about appearances, how they could be deceiving, and how Moses a couple of times gives us in parentheses that this is a place of Sodom and Gomorrah. And now this is where we left off, and we get to chapter 14, and this is not yet the event at Sodom and Gomorrah. But you see that things are not looking up for Lot. He begins to have problems, him and his household. Chapter 14, we're going to read all the way through verse 16. And I was thinking about asking for volunteers to read it, but if you glance at it, you'll probably, unless you have a volunteer, does anybody want to take a shot at it? It has a lot of Hebrew names in there, geographical locations. Well, I'll just do it. All right, so I got the NIV this time. Genesis 14. At this time, Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of Goiim, went to war against Ber, king of Sodom, Bersha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, Shemeber, king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar. All these latter kings joined forces in the valley of Siddim, the Salt Sea. For 12 years they had been subject to Chedorlaomer, but in the 13th year they rebelled. In the 14th year, Chedorlaomer and the kings allied with him went out and defeated the Rephaites in Ashtaroth, Karnaim, the Susites in Ham, the Amatites in Shaveh Kirithaim, and the Horites in the hill country of Seir, as far as El Paran, near the desert. Then they turned back and went to En Mishpat, that is Kadesh, and they conquered the whole territory of Amalekites, as well as the Amorites who were living in Hazazon Tamar. Then the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, and the king of Admah, the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar, marched out and drew up their battle lines in the valley of Siddim against Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, Tidal, king of Goiim, Amraphel, king of Shinar, and Arioch, king of Elasar, 4 kings against 5. Now the valley of Siddim was full of tar pits, and when the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, some of the men fell into them, and the rest fled to the hills. The 4 kings seized all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their food. Then they went away. They also carried off Abram's nephew Lot and his possessions, since he was living in Sodom. One who had escaped from and reported this to Abram, the Hebrew. Now Abram was living near the great trees of Mamre, and the Amorite, a brother of Eshcol and Honor, all of whom were alive with Abram. When Abram heard that his relative had been taken captive, he called out the 318 trained men born in his household and went in pursuit as far as Dan. During the night, Abram divided his men to attack them, and he routed them, pursuing them as far as Hobah, north of Damascus. He recovered all the goods and brought back his relative Lot and his possessions, together with women and the other people. All right, so what is happening there? I know it seems like it's a lot, and we're not going to, dwell too much into the details, but we'll just look at the bigger picture. And the broader view that comes to the fore is we're not just looking now at the story of Abraham, but we're looking at the world that he lived in and the surrounding areas and countries and kingdoms, basically. So what you have is a story of rebellion, of a revolt. So there's Lot settles in Sodom, right? And in Sodom, around Sodom, and there's several cities that have been under the control of this king, Kedorlaomer. That's the main guy, and he has allies, and these guys, they collect tribute from the other places. For 12 years, because of their power, because of their military might, they've made other city kingdoms, if you will. We're not going to get into geopolitics too much here, but they have been controlling those territories, which has been the case throughout the history. And so other kings were not independent kings, but they had to pay tribute to this main guy, this Kedorlaomer. And at some point, the other guys say, we're not going to pay tribute to this Kedorlaomer. And they revolt. They have a rebellion. Think for a moment, what are some major reasons for revolts and revolutions? Freedom from what?
From whoever's in charge of right then.
Yeah. But what is it about money? It goes back. So if you think about those of you who, and I know that not everybody is a fan of history, right? But how many revolutions and wars have been fought throughout the history? And what is at least a major reason for all those conflicts? Money. Now, there's other things on top, okay? And you can say that are some major conflicts that come to your mind that you think about? Just power, but power is also equates what? Money, right? Now think about some of the major conflicts that readily come to your mind, whether it's a war or revolution. And then think about what motivated it. Now, there's some things that go on top of it, right? What about the American Revolution? Taxation. It begins with taxation. What about World War II? Control. And in that mindset of the up until the 20th century, and even to this day, some nations believe that if you can control and acquire land, you're going to control and you're going to acquire more resources. And even what is happening right now in Ukraine and Russia, in as much as there's political, certainly, and ideological stuff, but there's so much money that is involved in there and access to resources that somewhere at the bottom of all the conflicts, what about the Civil War?
Over states' rights
state rights, but also there's very strong economical element in there. That's why and I want to, but just think about it. It's the money is there. I mean, we went back to that. The love of money is the root of all evil. And yes, I mean, you look at the Luther's Reformation, right? And the conflict that started. Now, there's a religious reason why Luther got the support he got, but there's also what? They didn't want to, what? Pay Rome. So basically, with this little story, we're reminded that has the civilization changed a whole lot since Genesis? It's basically the same. Basically the same motivation. The same, just like the flood. The intent and every thought of man's heart is evil all the time. So you have the war that ensues. Basically, Chedorlaomer and his allies, they travel city by city, teaching these guys a lesson, showing them that, no, you're not going to stop paying me money. If you do, I'm going to punish you and make sure that you pay up. You're going to pay the consequences. Not only are you going to pay me the money back, it's kind of like it's an old, once again, on a small scale, it's repeated again and again in a kind of a corrupt, failed states where the government is forcing the people to pay them up. And if the government is not doing, usually it's the government combined with what? With some sort of a criminal element. And what they do is they collect money for protection. And if you want to have a license and if you want to do business, you have to pay up the money. So, I mean, nothing has changed. I mean, this is a classic stuff that you see all the way up until now in most of the world. But along the way, caught up in this, meat grinder, in this racketeering scheme, you have Lot. Okay, so Lot gets caught up into this mess, and it gets personal now for Abram. Anyway, because that's where Lot happened to choose to live, in one of the cities that got into this ordeal. So when Chedorlaomer and his armies, his allies, go through the cities, teaching them all a lesson, Lot, gets caught up in this. And his whole family is carried away as spoils of war, okay? This is where this is where Abraham gets involved because Lot is his nephew, and he treats him more like a kinsman, like a brother, Hebrews says. Now, think about Abram, okay? So he is one of our heroes of faith, right? We have kind of this imagery of those superheroes sometimes we think about. Now, what kind of a hero is Abram in Genesis chapter 14? Yeah. So if you wanted to pick an actor to play Abram, who would you pick?
Well, back in the old days, Charlton Heston.
Yeah. Somebody. I mean, he's coming out. Is he like a spiritual leader in this? He's a spiritual hero. Yeah, I mean, he's like a strategist. He comes up with a strategy, and he is and tactics and all those things. I mean, he's not quite Rambo. Rambo was doing it alone, right? I mean, he's doing like the Braveheart, right? I mean, he's doing like he's getting people to support him, a small band of men, and they just pull it off. And so, how many times have you studied this story in Sunday school lesson? You know, I don't think I ever thought about Abram as a last action hero, right? You know, remember that movie and they restored it? You know, they got together Stallone and who else was in that movie? All right, so you get this Abram that is coming out and with this response, he says, "This is my kinsman. This is Lot. This is family. This is personal. But I'm not going to just rescue him. I'm going to teach them a lesson." And so he brings them home, and he gathers allies somehow, and he has a total of how many people? And so, and we don't know how many men, but probably a sizable army, because you have this Kedorlaomer and his allies, and they attack them, and they are victorious. So you get this sense that this is a miracle that has happened, okay? Because Abram and only 318 men are able to defeat whatever the number. I mean, it's a king who is controlling all those territories and is able to conquer all those cities and teach them a lesson, and he is able to defeat them. He rescues Lot, and they begin the journey back to the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. So that kind of is a background of the story, because, and then this is where this gets interesting. Look at the rest of the chapter, okay? I know this is we went fast, but unless you have something else you can add. 17. After Abram returned from defeating Kedorlaomer, and the kings allied with him. So he's not like pulling off a rescue operation, right? He's not just going into the enemy territory, and okay, we pulled out Lot, and he defeated, it says right there, he defeated them. All right? We're not given any further detail. The king of Sodom came out to meet him in the valley of Shaveh, that is the king's valley. And this is where we need to pay attention, okay? This is important. Then Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was priest of God Most High, and he blessed Abram, saying, "Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand." Then Abram gave him 1/10 of everything. All right, this is where we're going to spend most of the time, because this is a very important part. You have this introduction of a very important entity, a very important person, Melchizedek, king of Salem.